Okay, guys. Hey, just wanted to talk a little bit about appraisals and tell you what is going on with an appraisal. So the only time an appraisal is needed is when a bank loan is involved. Remember, everything goes back to banks. The golden rule of real estate: he who has the gold makes the rules. So the lender gets to make the rules, and the lender says, oh, if we're going to loan money on a piece of property, we need to know what the value of that collateral is. We're going to loan you money. We're going to collateralize it with the house. That's security for the loan. But we need to have a sense, a third-party opinion of what the value of that collateral is. So you're going to buy a $300,000 house. You're going to put $50,000 down. You're going to borrow $250,000. We just want to make sure that that house is worth at least $250,000, if not a little bit more than that, for some buffer room. So they have to establish what is the value of that house. That is the appraisal. They use appraisers to, the appraiser does two things. One, gives an opinion of value, and number two, it's their inspection. That's the lender's inspection. The buyer gets an inspection, right? The buyer hires an inspector, they go do an inspection, but that's just a private report that's never shared with the bank. It's not shared with the appraiser. So how does the bank know the condition of the house? The banker doesn't get in his car and drive out to the house and look at it. They rely on the appraiser to follow the protocol in the appraisal report. And as you saw in that appraisal report, there's photos, there's condition. Does it have a crawl space? And so they're looking for safety issues, like he mentioned, straps on a hot water tank, CO detectors, smoke detectors, handrails, things that are different little trigger things that an appraiser is looking when he does an inspection for the bank. So just be mindful of that he's physically there on behalf of the bank, hired by the bank to do a visual inspection of the property, but to also do a report on the value of the property. And so that's what's happening. So that appraiser then when the bank receives that appraisal, they think, all right, we can loan this money. Now we can do this loan because we have a report of value. In the event we have to foreclose, we know that there's enough value in the collateral to be able to get our money back. That's what a bank's doing. A bank is not a risk-taking operation. They want a slam dunk, and that's why they do appraisals. Did you have a question? Okay, Kathy's asked the question, should a real estate agent attend the appraisal? As the buyer's agent or the listing agent? What's the best practice along those lines? So my answer to that is, it depends. Who benefits the most from a low appraisal in this particular situation? So you look at the property, you look at the situation, and you're going to think, who do I represent? Do I represent the buyer? Do I represent the seller? In the event that there's a low appraisal, who is inconvenienced the most? You might have a seller that really it will determine their future. They're in the house, they need to move, they're moving across the country. This needs to go through. We don't need anything that stands in the way of them getting out of this house. So as the listing agent, I'm thinking, we cannot afford a low appraisal at this point in time. I need to do everything I can as a listing agent to prove or support the value of this home. So I'm going to prepare my list of comparables. I'm going to show up at the house when the appraiser gets there. I'm going to call the lender or call the agent or whoever and say, hey, when the appraisal's scheduled, can you please give me a call, because I'd like to be there when the appraiser's there. I'd like to explain some things about this property that I think would be helpful. You show up, you have your comps, you're professional, you're courteous, and you let them know, we went on the market on Thursday, we did 2 open houses over the weekend where we probably had about 60 people through the home. We had 2 offers on Monday, we picked the highest and best offer, and that's what we've got. Here's the house. This is very unique because it has a full formal dining room. It also has probably one of the nicest garden sheds you've ever seen in the backyard, alley access. Just point out some of the things that are valuable. And then so there you go. I thought that might be helpful for you as you do your job as an appraiser. How's your day going? How's the weather? Just professional, courteous. What? You got to be careful with that, because they're supposed to be a neutral third party, so you can't be influencing them with bribes. Yeah, RESPA. So you're just professional, and you're on time or early. You're professional, and providing good information that would be helpful for them to do their job. Okay. So the other side of the equation, a buyer. If my buyer is not pressed for time, they've got all the time in the world and they really value the best price possible, and I think they might have overpaid a little bit, I might not attend that appraisal. I might hope a little bit that maybe that appraisal comes in low and my buyer will benefit from that. But let's say my buyer instead is coming to the end of their lease, the school year's coming up, it's August, they're closing in August, the school year's coming up, they're moving their kids into a new school district. I'm thinking, wow, if this doesn't appraise and we have a problem, that's going to be a hardship on my buyer, because they're trying to move, their lease ends in August, they're getting the kids into news. The last thing we need is a low appraisal right now. So I, as a buyer's agent, will also show up with as much information that I can provide, helpful information that I can provide the appraiser, so he can give an accurate, he can take all the factors into mind when he puts his appraisal report together. So you got to think about who benefits the most from a low appraisal, I guess, if a low appraisal was to occur. The other one you might, if you're super busy, like my schedule's really full right now, man, I know this thing's going to appraise. This is a house in Columbia neighborhood. We sold it. We had 10 offers, and the market's improved since then. And I found 5 comps within a mile radius. Well, then it's like, hey, my worries are over. I'm not going to worry about it. But honestly, just make it part of your best practice to always attend the appraisal. Can't hurt. Purely from just, you might learn something, and you can build rapport with an appraiser, because the more these guys, they're human beings. They are influenceable more than just chocolate. It's like, are you respectable? Do I trust you? Are you someone that I can respect? Anytime I see you next time, did you drain the life out of me and nag me and annoy the crap out of me? Or were you like really helpful and professional? Yes, I want to work with you more often. So every time they encounter you, like John Martinez now, he encounters me. He didn't know me 10 years ago, but now he encounters me and he's like, whatever you need. What do you need? I'm there for you. So that's, if anything, go to the appraisal just to build a relationship.
So as a buyer's agent, would you take possibility as well?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think that was everything I wanted to talk about appraisals. Is there any other questions? All right, thank you.
Some people think we are here to break your deals. We're not. We're part of the transaction. Without you, there's not as many of us. So we appreciate what you guys do for business, always. My name is John Martinez. I'm an appraiser here in town in Bellingham, Washington. I've lived here about 30 years, but I've been an appraiser about 17. And with that, to become an appraiser, like a real estate agent, we have training. We have training in things like ethics, which ends up being probably the most important thing, because that's one thing people will sniff that out on you. If you're a corner cutter, short taker, liar, if you say something that isn't true, and that helps everybody along the line if you keep it above boards. And I'll try to break down some of those advantages for guys like me, because we rely on you. We don't go into every single house that you see. We don't go into every single house that you sell. But the houses we do go into, we rely on you, because what we're trying to do in our part is to make a comparison. So that's kind of where we start with. Our world is reports. We write a report. It goes to the mortgage company. Either the mortgage company, like you have a couple right in the neighborhood, they'll either take that themselves and do it through their underwriter systems, or they'll take it to a bank. Or, so it's a mortgage lender, or it's a bank, Bank of the Pacific, WeCoo. And so we have a variety of accounts that we work with, and you get on a list. And so what we try to do is we take care of, they're more like relationships. They're kind of like the loan officers I work with. It's kind of like what you do too. Your client nowadays, they have to have their ducks in a row, because when they go to make an offer on a house and they're not prepared for it, we know what happens. They're going to get outbid. And Tim's probably seen this. He's just saying, make sure that everybody knows where we're coming from, because it's a fluid industry and deals are, they're quick. And so what we start from is we don't have a request until the bank asks us one. And they'll say, hey, John, we just sold, this house is under contract. So our job is to come in, look at what you prepare. The part that you prepare is the contract, the purchase and sale, the earnest money. And we go through those to make sure there's nothing that doesn't create a question. Like when somebody says something like, oh, and then I'm going to add a roof. Oh, so you got to make sure that we're clear. And those that are looking over your shoulder, there's people looking over my shoulder too. So when I send a report, somebody's looking over my shoulder saying, hey, you know what, John? There's been some appraisers that have treated this differently than you. So we all have somebody above us. And so what I try to have everybody understand is if your purchase and sale is clean, which most of them are, we're pretty blessed in this town. Everyone's pretty above board. They all went to the same purchase and sale school, because it makes it easier for us. I can skim it. You got 26 pages of whatever, and then we hit the real stuff. So we get that, we get a request, and oftentimes we're off and running. And so what we do next is we go to, if you just sold the house, that's where we start. We go to the house, we do an appraisal inspection. That's a little different than the inspector that crawls in every nook and cranny and writes, 35 pages of what's wrong with the house, and the last page says, but it's okay. So what we try to do is we look at it through two ways. One is, we want to make sure the house is safe. We want to make sure that there's not blown out windows or any surprises, or the flooring is not soft, or we look under the house, make sure we're on, we have foundation, because in this town, there's some houses that still don't have foundation. We look at some of the obvious things, right? So knob and tube, there's things that are a little new to you, and unless you're a builder or you've crawled in a few attics and crawled in a few crawl spaces where you look and go, ooh, that's old school. They need to upgrade. So what we try to do is get a snapshot of that dwelling, measure it, get a feel for it in the neighborhood. We know most of the appraisers in town, and there's probably 20 really good appraisers in our town. We're blessed that way. Most of them are really good. And so what we'll try to do is get a feel for that photo, take our pictures, start on the report, and then what we'll do is go and look around. Now here's a part of the equation that I think some appraisers may not ask about, but we do. We will work for a small company. There's 5 of us, so there's 4 really smart people in our office, and then there's me. And what we try to do is say, okay, agents, you know this house more than I do. You've been through there, you've kicked the tires, you've met the folks, and over coffee, they told you about the view, they told you about, upgrading this window seal and the slider and the new deck. Sometimes we don't get to see people when we go there. I like to meet with my agents. Just how I operate. I could get an MLS key, run in and out, and nobody would know me there. I just kind of like it this way, because then I'd say, tell me about the house. What do you know that I don't know at a first glance? They'll say something, when it's cloudy out, when it's not cloudy out, there's quite a view out there. Things like that. Or we're on new flooring. Hey, we just redid this. That's a new Trex deck. There's this, there's that. Things that sometimes I may not see. I often will ask, hey, if there's something special, let me know. Or sometimes, and not every appraiser prefers this, but you've looked around, you set the price. You're the listing agent. You set the price. How did you set that price? We know. You're not just doing this. Hey, how about $400? I don't know, $450. What do you think? No. Mr. Tim is saying, no. This neighborhood, the high is this. What do we have? Let's get it to a reasonable conversation, because we want people to come in and look at it. Not just your agents here, but there's guys in the next door and the next door over there. They all are in the same boat. They're looking for inventory. So then you're in that position. Just let us know how you thought about it. Hey, these were the sales, the closed sales we thought were most similar. That's how we developed it. We're not just pie in the sky. None of us are. So when we have something like your list of, I've printed it up, John, no problem. Here's even if you just gave me the MLSs, heck, I'm going to look it up, because it's a tool that maybe I can use to help me. And That's what I say just include it, send it. You may not know at what point I come into the program, but it's good to kind of, hey, Mr. Appraiser, if there's anything you need, if you don't know, once I leave here, you'll kind of go, oh, I know John. He's a pretty good guy. If I have a question or a comment, I'll just email it to him. So that it's pretty painless. Hey, Johnny, here's some sales I thought, because that's a complex house. It's on the lake. Hey, Johnny, here's some things we thought about. I won't say no. I'll say, hey, thanks for the tool. Thanks for the tip. Because it's what we have to do, right? In this market, when there's not as much inventory and pricing is not going lower, things like, hey, John, there were 5 offers on this. We have an escalating clause on 4 of them. An agent or an appraiser that didn't hear that or doesn't know that, they're at a disadvantage. They're going to go up and go, it's listed for $350. It's sold for $380. Wow, it's probably worth $351. Hello. I get calls all the time about those sorts of things. It's like, it helps us. And that's part of, you guys are in this funny quadrant of in between. You're in between the mortgage people, so you kind of got to learn about loans. You kind of got to get a feel for FHA. And then there's us guys on the other side you kind of want to get a feel for what we kind of need to know. Like, why isn't there a handrail on that stairway? So that's part of it. That's under the safety world. There's little things like that because we're at this point. Double strapping the water heater seems silly. If a 9.8 hits us, I'm not going to worry that much about my 55-gallon water heater, but somebody's going to. And we're going to try to say, okay, $17.85, get that thing strapped. Help the process so that we don't get any slower than we already are. And in this environment where, things are in a hurry, you've got your loan guy that you've just said, I'll get it to you clean and once. He's also made a promise to somebody else, to you, and said, no, I can close your deal in X number of days. That's why you want to recommend us. That's why Movement Mortgage is so great, or that's why because you develop that relationship of trust. So these are those little things that we need to make sure we all try to do, because a guy like me is going to walk in and he's going to say, whoa, that's not double strapped. It doesn't automatically mean it's going to blow the deal up, but sometimes it takes a day for an underwriter to say, okay, either strap it and take a photograph, or okay, we know, thank you. Just one more step. So there's lots of little tidbits of that we think we can help you with. Let's see. Let's talk a little bit about FHA loans. The thing about an FHA loan, it's just like a regular loan, except it gives a borrower a little better leverage, a little less down payment. First-time home buyers, they get a little bit of a break. Instead of having an 80%, they can bring it in a little less. So they want to buy their first house. Most of their first house isn't going to be an $800,000 house either. So those are the deals we got to worry a lot of, because those deals take a long time to earn it through. The biggest thing for them is health and safety. They need handrails on when you go up to a deck off the side of the house and he's over my pocket. That's a problem. Someone can get hurt, and that's what they look for. They want to make sure that the roof is dry. We walk in and we look at the bathrooms. If it's discolored, find out. Is it just a little, little bleach and water? Is it or is it mold? It turns into mold. It's a game changer. So make sure that you guys kind of get familiar with some of those things that we have to be familiar with. Septic, well, it's a website with 400 different things in it. You'll get a headache. But at least you can kind of get exposed to it. And pretty soon you'll pick off things that, oh, that makes sense. I'll get that. That makes sense to me. And that's what we try to do is facilitate that so that your deal doesn't go sideways, because we don't want to be the guys bringing you the bad news. Hey, guess what? That deck that's this high in the backyard, they need a rail around it. Suddenly the buyer's not too happy because the deal's going to be taking longer, but the seller's even in a worse mood because someone just said he's got to spend about $8,500 to wrap this, his brand new 20 by 40 deck. It's just too high off the ground. So those little tidbit things that we always try to expose it to everybody, because that's what the lenders want us to do. And that's what we're trying to do. And any of those little things that you guys catch out and sniff out early, even for your buyers. I mean, you're walking in, you got a buyer up there, and the market's so active and such a small inventory. You get a little bit, I don't want to say the word desperate, but they're ready to jump. They're let's do it. We can do that. It helps to know how their loan is going to be processed. It's going to be a mortgage loan, what type of loan, cash. That way you're coming from a position of, let's close this thing. I'm ready to go. But I'm sure Tim tells you that all day long. Marital sales concessions. Oh, here's a really good one. When I read an MLS, what I'm hoping to do is to get a feel for the actual square footage. We have a thing on our grid, on our form, and I'll send a little one of these little reports around. We speak a different language because we base it on cost to build. So if I have what's called a one-story basement, we all know them, right? You walk into the main floor, sometimes you walk up to the dining room, kitchen, living room, master, 2 beds and a bath, and then you go downstairs. What we have on the downstairs, if there's any dirt along the side of the house, there's lots of split level houses in this town, or one-story basements where you walk out and slide out, go to a large patio or a deck, and now you get a view of, I don't know, Sandy Point or something, right? Something special. So those houses get treated differently to us, and the square footages get treated differently to us. And what we try to do is do our best to find houses that have that same style. If it has the same style, we're in business. But sometimes we have to use 1-stories or 2-story houses. So when we start using different styles of houses, some of that square footage gets treated differently. So what we hope you do, and most everybody's good, they'll say kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, and then they'll have the next line that says below grade, the basements. That'll be the family room, the bathroom, and the bedroom. Even though the total square footage, we all feel like that's a 3,000 square foot house, because of the way we have to write it in our report, it may look like a 1,500 up and 1,500 down. And so that's one of those things. If you know a sale that's similar, let that appraiser know, because that's helpful. Those are the things that on the form, and you'll add that up. What I suggest you don't do is add the garage, because you see that all the time. It's a 728 square foot house on the Columbia, which is not a very big house, 2-bed, 1-bath, right? With a little 1-car garage. Well, they added that garage as gross living. Suddenly it's 1,126 square feet. Well, all guys like me that are skimming through, 1,126, perfect. Until you look it up at the county, it says, no, it's not. It's smaller. And you usually curse the agent. Like, yeah. Really? You're trying to pull that wool over me? You added the bedroom that's in the doghouse as part of the house. Does that seem fair? So it kind of runs through that above boards. Let's try to keep it clean, because if everybody does it the same way, then it's a lot easier for everybody down the road. Then your buyer's not going to be surprised. And that's what we try to do. But paint the picture, do the story. Most of the MLS we see are good and right on. Some of them, directions the wrong way, little things like that. If somebody's looking over your shoulder, I'm sure, just, you don't want to spell the word intersection wrong. You just want to make sure that it's a simple page to read. We all read great ones. There's some good flowery ones, the sunset and in your eye, wait for you, hold your girlfriend's hand and look at this water. That's all great. But get the good stuff so that we're all squared away on that, all right? That's a tip from us too. What I've shown here is this is a typical report, just a single family dwelling in the city of Linden. A lot of it may seem like blather, but it's about where it is. Basically the public information needs to be part of it. And that's how big is the parcel of land, what style of house is it, does it have a crawl space, does it have a basement? Doesn't seem very exciting. But to a bank that's going to lend somebody a bunch of money, they really want to know what they're investing in. And when the market's doing what it's doing now, it's hard to be wrong, because the market's so healthy. The next sale is going to be at that price or probably even higher. And we know that. Even when you just look at the sale line, it always goes up. So then we add, this is called, usually it's called the grid, and what the grid stands for is the sales that we use that we thought were most similar to the subject property. And on and on and on, and most of it is a little on the drier side, let's say. But it's got maps and photographs and sketches, and so kind of like you would see an inspector's report. You guys don't often see appraisals because by the time you're done, your client's going to have an appraisal, and they'll usually get it at the end of the conversation. Here's the appraisal, here's what we saw, here's what this is what your appraiser thought. This is how they felt about your house. And in it, what kind of windows did we have? What kind of roof did we have? How busy is the street? Things like that. And so that's kind of and I'll just pass it around if you haven't seen one before. That way you get that's just a regular single-family dwelling in the city of Linden. I probably should have scratched out everybody's name. I think I got pretty close, though. Let's see. Oh, let's talk about Zillow. So if Zillow was really good, I wouldn't have a job because the bank would certainly like to go for free to pull up and see what Zillow thinks a house is worth and just go, yeah, let's make a loan on that. But that's not what they do. Zillow it's the broken clock. It's right a couple of times a day.
Can you explain why Zillow is not a good source for
There are good sources. There is some part of it that is good, right? And so the best part about it that I find is that a client who doesn't have MLS, they don't have access to the information that we have. So what they do is the next best things, Zillow and Redfin, because what they'll have then is a map of the area. The best thing I find is that they can go and look and hit those little Zestimate guys, little houses, and see, we can see this house sold, that house sold, that house sold. I have this conversation with many, many people because I do refinances for banks. And they'll say, well, Zillow said this. And I said, Zillow is awesome in some places. If we were in Los Angeles and we were in Ventura Valley and there was 500 houses that all looked the same, they were all 3-bed, 2-bath houses, it is a good one. It's really close to being right. The house 2 doors down just sold. Golly gee, they sold for $100. So with that being said, it's common for appraisers to kind of come in a little bit feeling conservative about things. And the first question we ask all the time is, were there any listings? What was available? What was the actives? And that's where we have a difficult part because there's no listings. Everything's pending that day. So what we're trying to do is find a way to bridge that gap and look at the market without, I don't have a financial interest in it, but we're trying to get a feel for how the market is treating this particular product, this house, this vacant land, this condominium. And that's how we all try. All of us are trying to do our best job with that. And sometimes we hit it out of the park, and sometimes we stub our toe. And so to avoid toe stubbing, like I said before, give us help. Help us out. Sometimes you go to a house, there'll be a little listings, cheat sheets, upgrades. You see those on MLS? Especially if it's an older house in an older neighborhood. Upgrades are expensive in older houses. If they're going to redo some of that oak flooring, that's expensive. If they're going to redo trim, all of those things, doors, interior doors, sometimes it takes you 3 minutes. You and your husband talk over coffee? Write me a note. I'll write it in the MLS. It's pretty effortless because you only have to do it once. And so those are tools that do help appraisers, and it does help the transaction. And I'd do it if I was doing what you were doing. Any questions going on? So far, go.
Yeah, so it sounds like you welcome a collaborative effort with the broker, and so you would welcome any sort of input from them.
Yeah.
Sounds like, what about the ones are there ones who don't really welcome that sort of?
I think what it is the ethics portion of our world. What we're not trying to do, or we're not supposed to do, is talk about value, right? But we can talk about valuation. That's, it's in the same world, but it's not, no, I need this to be $500,000, John. No appraiser is going to like that kind of call. They're going to say, hey, whoa, back up, Jack. Here we're going to do this. Here's how we're doing this. Because sometimes mortgage companies can roll some of those numbers in because their client, whoa, the house, the offer was $380,000. Well, we're going to put our money onto it. We're going to put a little bit more into this mortgage. We're going to go with $400,000. Well, guess what? It's probably not worth $400,000. And so that onus does not belong on us. So it's a thing where, to avoid that for us and loan officers, we hardly get to talk to them. We may be friendly with them, but you don't really talk to them as much anymore. They put in a buffer between the two of us. It's called an appraisal management company. We just call them an AMC. And with those guys being in the middle, the communication goes through them. So they'll send us an email or a text and say, hey, this is where we are. Where's, how soon until the report is done? But it's not about value. And they'll say, it says it all over. If anybody pressures you or you feel pressured, then you can say, no, I'm not going to do this report anymore. I'm out because I felt pressure. And so you got a kid glove. It's got to be shared information. And sometimes appraisers will be a little defensive about that. I know some of those guys, and I often, if we're sitting around, I'll say, hey, listen, I work with appraisers. I often say, were there any listings? Were there any active listings? Oh, okay, that's interesting. Because sometimes when there's only 10 units in a condominium box and the last one sold for $10,000 less than yours, guess what? You may have to go outside there and it may have sold last week. That helps. Sometimes you can't just be so focused on the minute, but step away so that you can capture the whole thing. But a lot of appraisers don't work in a collaborative area. A lot of them work, out of their closets or bathrooms or bedrooms and whatnot at their house. And so we feel blessed that we have an active group of people that if something seems curious, they'll just call it out. Hey, has anybody seen one of these? It helps our little company. It makes us smarter, we think. But that's kind of how you got to learn. You'll have to kind of feel your way through that. I'd still offer, hey, I know this is a tough one because of this. If there's anything I can help you with, I've thought about it a long time. Most will say, nah, I got it. No, you stay where you are, broker. Right? Go get me another deal. I'm not busy this weekend. So, but when we're doing what we're doing now, which is 4 months ago, I was probably doing 80-20. 80% sales to 20% refinances. Well, as Tim will tell you, those interest rates, they're not going up right now. They may hold steady, but they're you'll hear this, historically low. Well, they are historically low. And when they're this, what's happening is people are saying, well, you know what? Maybe I'll move across the street. Maybe I'll take this low interest rate and just redo my kitchen and I'll just be happy with it. That's the tough part, right? Because people want to move, but they don't. Where are they going to move to? And unless you're moving to Oklahoma, it's kind of hard to be ahead of the game, right? So we will often ask them to the refinance, when they start getting slower, the interest rates are creeping up. Right now, our inboxes are blowing up. They're just, a lot of people are taking advantage of that. Guys that have income property, I've got a duplex, I bought this 3 years ago. Those rents are, anybody that rents anything in this town knows, they're not giving it away, right? Slumlord out there, but they're taking advantage of that too. So we're able to see a lot of different properties, and it's not completely flipped, but it's getting close. It's probably 60-40. So yeah, it's good for us because it keeps everybody running and gunning, but it also is it's hard to hit all those deadlines because it's like a faucet right now. It's really coming fast and furious. That's a good question though. Anybody else have one of those good questions? Yeah, I like to ask that. Let's see. Yes, I told you about escalating clauses, multiple offers, and comparable sales if you have any. Concessions are important for us to know. So what we do is we try to give the bank a finished product that says it's my opinion, but it has to be supportable with sales. And so that's the hard part about a Zillow mentality, because then we can't just choose anywhere we want. Even though we may have a difficult property and it's on Lummi Island, we know that's not off the hook. It depends. It can be a little slow out there. In fact, I'm going there next week. But you do your best. Sometimes you guys need an older sale, but what we're hoping is that the underwriter, who's well behind the curtain, you think we're behind the curtain. The underwriter, we don't even know his name, but his job is to get it. Does this guy know who is this guy? He already doesn't like me. I don't even know why. I'm just letting him a nice guy. But he looks and he says, is it a supportable opinion? And that's what they're looking for. And so that's why all those little things you give us, the tips, the hints, the relationships we build up. I mean, I talk to Tim here and there. I talk to his daughter a fair bit about little things that seem a little curious, or what's going on here, or what's going on there. And a lot of that's just friendly valuation talk. You guys see a lot of things. We see a lot of things. We both look at things very similarly, because you're looking at it from the position of, can I sell it? Can I close it? Can I be in a living room and get this thing done? We're coming from a different place, but there's a lot of similarities to it. I do sometimes do work for agents that maybe they have a complex property. Whether I just did one out on Clark's Point. That was difficult, right? So difficult properties, and you'll see this when you're sitting in a living room and they want to know, you say, well, Mr. Customer and Mrs. Customer, here's what we've analyzed. We call it a CMA. This is what we believe your house would be selling for. We think we can ask this much. And I notice, because some of the agents in town who I do this kind of work for, it's often the husband. This is my castle. I built that fence by my hands, and doggone it, my castle is worth the most money in the world, and now you got to sit there and navigate through the deal. And I sometimes, heck, your neighbors, the gang with the orange dog, I've helped those guys with that. I've helped, Wintermere, a lot of those different players out there. And since I don't have a horse in the race, sometimes they'll just look at me and just say, what's your job? And I'll say, I'm just going to do an appraisal here. I'm just going to give you my opinion. You have a good agent. This agent's, that's why this person's in your office, in your house. I'm going to give you what my opinion is, and you just take it or leave it, roll it into a ball. But usually I have the agent ask the seller to participate in that cost, because I don't do it for free. And I'm just going to give them a report just like that. Here's my opinion. And then those two can sit down and say, well, that report's already old, because the market. Let's sit down, let's look at listings again, and now we can have a reality conversation instead of it's not about ego anymore. It's not about, I built that house, or, Grandma loved this farm. Those conversations, you get those because it's about feeling, right? I mean, you guys do that all day long. Well, I'm a cold-hearted bugger, and I don't have feeling. What I'm trying to do is to analyze this sale and give you my opinion. I do the same thing. They get a report. I'm gone. Sure as heck, that thing goes in the market, and doggone, pretty darn close on that closed sale price. And I've been on a roll, so that's a good thing. That's what I do. I think that's all I've got for right now. Is there questions, or as newbies, there's lots of things that it's going to be hard to nail each thing, but everybody is, you're in a great fun adventure. You got a great leader over there, a great view, and it's fun to be an agent, and everybody finds their different groove. Whether hopefully it's you like people too, you like houses, And when those people find that house, that brings you some happiness. And guess what? A few dollars too. So it's kind of nice. So without those transactions, you can't buy any hot dogs. So we always just say, you know what? You never know. And I'll tell you one thing, word of mouth, I don't care how big and pretty you are and you put that sign on the wall like, look how pretty I am. It's about the word of mouth. And if you were respectful, even if you didn't get the deal, you still give that guy a call down the road and say, you know what? I enjoyed meeting you and your wife. And if there's anything I can do for you, you let me know. I'd love that opportunity. I'm telling you, that happens. I see it, it just does. Because many people in this town, because we're not that big of a town, but many people in this town, they know agents. They're related to agents. Their cousin's an agent, you know, and that's a lot of competition. You know, everybody knows somebody. And someone's going to be upset because of that. So I'll often say, hey, listen, you live out here on, you know, the Cyper Road. Do you see any other listing agents' faces as you drive by? Maybe they know a little something about this street. You know, because I don't want to be that guy who goes, oh, you got to go to Tim and the crew. Or, you know, there's occasions where I'll throw them out because I notice their signs. And I'll just say, yeah, give Cornwall, give those guys, give them a holler. Because they guys do a good job. Everyone likes it. It's good. You're doing a good thing over here. Appreciate that.